reconvened at 5 p.m. Board members present via Zoom are Trustee Bluford Daniels, Trustee Santos, Trustee Sung, Trustee Adams. I don't know who. And myself. Things are still popping. Okay.
Santos is here.
Yeah, no, I got Santos. And Trustee Adams, but actually, no, I don't know that Trustee Adams is there. I don't see her. So we do not have a quorum yet. Okay, we do have a quorum. Okay, and Trustee Adams. So Trustee Santos, Trustee Sung, Trustee Adams, Trustee Bluford Daniels, and myself, Trustee Cruz, I think I just saw pop up. Trustee Allen just popped up. Okay. I would like all board members, please keep your videos on while we're in a meeting so everybody knows that you're present, and silence or mute your microphones. Before we begin our meeting this evening, I'd like to call for a moment of silence in memory of Vanessa Guillen, the outstanding Chavez High School graduate from the class of 2018, whose life was tragically taken earlier this year at Fort Hood. Her memorial service is going to be tomorrow. Starting our meeting tonight, we will first hear from speakers to specific agenda items. We are glad that you have joined us online today under current guidance from federal, state, county, and city authorities concerning large gatherings and social distancing during the COVID-19 public health emergency. The Hattie Mae White Educational Support Center, including the board auditorium, is closed. However, it is still important that we allow time to hear from members of the community. In order to have your voices heard by the HISD Board of Education, a member of the community must have registered to speak with the Board Services Office by 9:30 a.m. today. Speakers should have left a telephone number when registering. District staff will call registered speakers and place them in a Zoom virtual waiting room until time for them to speak. Speakers may also have submitted written comments to be read publicly by a member of the district's administration in case there is a problem with Zoom. Any support information, for example, handouts regarding the community member's concern, should have been filed with the Board Services Office. We have 14 agenda speakers registered this evening. Speakers shall be limited to 2 minutes each. A member of the Board Services staff will track your time. A clock will signal when your time is up and the call will end. I ask that you please respect our procedures and the other speakers and end your remarks promptly when your time has expired. Only those who have registered with the Board Services Office or electronically by 9:30 a.m. today will be allowed to speak or have their comments read aloud. Should any registered speaker wish to distribute handout materials to the board, the materials must have been provided to Board Services via email at boardservices@houstonisd.org by 9:30 a.m. today. I'm going to turn this over to our administration to call in our speakers. Everyone, please mute your microphones. Thank you.
Okay, our first speakers are for agenda item E3, and I'll go in the order as they are in the waiting room. So our first speaker is Christina Probst. Ms. Probst, you have 2 minutes. You may begin.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Probst. I'm a pediatrician here in Houston. I don't know, I'm not familiar with this format, so I don't know if you all have seen the statement that I sent. I am involved because of my concern over in-person schooling at this time in the Houston area. There's been a lot in the media. There's been a lot of discussion about that. And a lot of it has been misrepresenting both the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics statements on in-person schooling. Both of those statements are based on safety. So school is important. In-person school is vital. It is crucial. We all agree. My colleagues all agree. The Texas Pediatric Society agrees. However, at this time during the pandemic, when the Houston area positivity rate is hovering anywhere between about 13 and 15%, most recently the state positivity rate has gone up and is now over 20%. It just is not a safe time to have children and staff and teachers indoors in closed quarters with indoor ventilation, no opportunity to open windows. The transmission rate is certainly higher for older children. Younger children have a lower risk of transmitting the illness, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, to other children. The concern, though, is also for the staff and for the teachers. And about a quarter of our school teachers are thought to fall into higher risk categories for COVID-19. And so there is a risk of them transmitting it to each other and them transmitting it to students, to children. So as a pediatrician, as a parent of two sons, both of whom attended
Thank you,
HISD
Dr. Probst.
schools,
Your time is up.
I'm concerned.
Our next speaker is Johnny Lee.
So it is also for the staff and for the teachers. And
Mr. Lee, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Hello. Afternoon, Dr. Lathan and HISD board members. Thank you for allowing us this time to speak with you about our concerns about the health and lives of our HISD students and staff and educators. I urge you to stay the course and at the very least follow the recommendations that has been laid out by our county judge and local health authorities. The Houston area is still seeing almost 2,000 positive cases on a daily average for the past month. We also have conventional flu season approaching, which typically starts at the end of September. No country in the world has experienced the spread of COVID-19 during peak flu season. This is not an experiment for Houstonians to conduct, especially for the 4th largest city and for the 7th largest student population in the country. We need leadership that will prevent as many needless incidents as possible. Unfortunately, it's up to you all, the HISD school board, who has the last say on how we move forward. We're talking about 214,000 students and 29,000 employees. That's a total of at least 243,000 souls who will be under your watch. Cities that have allowed face-to-face instruction are already quarantining within the first week from their own outbreaks. Some of these districts are as little as a tenth of the size of HISD. Does HISD want to be another district in the headlines, questioning why you allowed face-to-face instruction despite the amount of cases and recommendations made by local authorities? Please stick with your current schedule, but be prepared to extend those dates. As another superintendent once grimly said, quote, "In the end, it will be impossible to know if we overreacted or did too much, but it will be quite apparent if we underreacted or did too little." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Our next speaker is Melissa Fantuzzo. Ms. Fantuzzo, you may begin.
What may I begin with? I'm sorry.
You have 2 minutes to make your statement to the Board of Trustees, speaking on item E3.
I'm not speaking on any item. I emailed that in. I don't know what
Okay.
E3 is.
No problem. We will read your statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll read it if you start the time, please. I disagree with your school opening plans and agree with the CDC and AAP. The benefits of children returning now to school far outweigh the negative consequences. Without the in-person learning environment, children are more at risk for depression, suicide, and drug abuse. There are many students who do not have safe home lives, and for them, school is a place where they are able to escape it and depend on our teachers to report cases. Many of these students often only eat due to reduced or free programs. In a district where nearly 80% of the students are economically disadvantaged, school is how they can end the cycle of poverty and improve their lives. While we respect some families and teachers who will need a virtual option, this is not viable for all students whose parents work, for students who do not have a safe or quiet home, or for English language learners and students receiving special services. It is untenable to foist a one-size-fits-all approach through October 19th when every student's situation is different and many are unable to be educated through virtual means. HISD admitted over 7,500 children never logged on for virtual instruction. What metrics is HISD using to allow students to physically return to school? Transparency is demanded of the board and interim superintendent. Houston families have been waiting for 5 months for straight answers. No more subjective opinions on COVID-19 inhibiting schools opening face-to-face. What are the objective metrics? What can we hold your board accountable to? Let's work together to open schools back up safely to families and teachers that need and want that option. Please work with each teacher to determine their need. How will you be sure to set expectations with teachers on how you will help them feel safe? Staffing is a school-by-school issue and should be handled that way. What supplies will you be providing and what extra do teachers need to provide? Please communicate that to them so they can use their great community to help them. Each school should have a different % of students and teachers that are ready to return in person. What are those numbers for each school? The next speaker, we're also going to read his, is Jeffrey Fantuzzo. What metrics is HISD using to allow students to physically return to school? Transparency is demanded of the school board and interim superintendent. Houston families have been waiting for 5 months for straight answers. No more subjective opinions on COVID-19 inhibiting schools opening face-to-face. What are the objective metrics we can hold your board accountable to? Let's work together to open schools back up safely to families and teachers that need and want that option. Please work with each teacher to determine their need. How will you be sure to set expectations with teachers on how you will help them feel safe? Staffing is a school-by-school issue and should be handled that way. What supplies will you be providing and what extra do teachers need to provide? Please communicate that to them so they can use their great community to help them. Each school should have a different % of students and teachers that are ready and return to in person. What are those numbers for each school? Let's work with those schools whom have large percentages to start to phase back students. When can we do this? Our next speaker is Daniel Santos, and he is speaking to item F2. Mr. Santos, you may begin.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Daniel Santos, and tonight I am speaking for thousands. I am speaking for the thousands who emailed you earlier this year expressing their displeasure with the District of Innovation resolution. We stand firmly against agenda item F2. Adopting this designation increases the risk that exemptions will be misused to degrade teacher certification or remove class size limits or dilute parents' due process rights. Now is not the time for unilateral decisions without consent of your constituents. Over 85% of them rejected this proposal during a public hearing on May 28th. I repeat, over 85% of them rejected this proposal during a public hearing on May 28th. During a pandemic, we do not need to further destabilize our school district. Instead of a DOI, please allow the community to collaborate in earnest with the administration to support our students and our families. Please vote no on agenda item F2. Focus on our real crisis, not a manufactured one. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jackie Anderson. Ms. Anderson was there. Just let me see if she moved. We will come back and retry Ms. Anderson. We will go to Sarah Terrell. Ms. Terrell, you have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Do I need to press *6?
No, ma'am, we can hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Good evening. I want to begin by saying how proud I am of HISD's food distribution program during the pandemic. Thank you all for taking good care of the nutritional needs of so many of our students and their families during these dark days. If any citizens didn't understand how important HISD schools are to the function of a healthy Houston, I hope they do now. However, I don't understand why the board is still working on a District of Innovation plan. In May, I spoke against this idea along with many others. Clearly, there's no strong community support, yet the superintendent is still pursuing what she described to press in April as an aggressive timeline. I asked then, is the board exploiting the coronavirus crisis to force a change the public does not want and the district does not need? I'm still urgently asking that question. The crisis has deepened. October 19th will be here in an eye blink. All your focus should be on getting the resources in place to, number one, make sure all students have devices and connectivity for the virtual first day on September the 8th, and number two, making sure that on October 19th, all students and teachers will be safe in school. These are Herculean tasks. To divert resources to pursue DOI is just appallingly wasteful in this moment. The, quote, benefits of DOI we have already, including a flexible school calendar and available waivers for minimum attendance and uncertified teachers. DOI comes with a lot of other possible waivers, and the district asks us to just trust it, not to use them, also to do such things as hire more uncertified teachers. TEA has already modified the rules for this year, and they will likely do so again. We don't need DOI.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to Ms. Jackie Anderson. Ms. Anderson, you may begin.
Good evening, trustees. I am here speaking against the formation of a local innovation plan committee to draft a local innovation plan. How is the District of Innovation adding anything to the student outcomes? What is the rush to put this not so innovative plan into effect? In the middle of a pandemic that has heightened risk since we left in March, you are addressing a District of Innovation. There are too many unanswered questions regarding the safe reopening of our schools. I would not believe the time listing the questions that we get every day. While we still have double-digit questions daily, then you are not ready. Your plan is not clearly understood or received by your constituents. The time spent on developing a committee to draft this plan is a slap in the face to teachers, students, and parents of HISD. Additionally, you heard from many community members, teachers, and parents speaking out against the District of Innovation. Have they no voice? You do not need a District of Innovation to change the school start dates. They were changed for the upcoming school year without a DOI. After students lost of face-to-face instructions this school year, you do not still believe that students should get a pass for less face-to-face instruction during the 2021 school year or have non-certified teachers before them. You do not win the game by changing the rules. I implore each of you to reconsider your previous vote, search within your hearts and minds, carefully consider your vote tonight. HISD students will not be on the receiving end of anything good that comes out of this District of Innovation. This can wait. Prioritize your students first this time. Reopen safely, protect students, protect educators, protect support staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Pamela Boveland. Dr. Boveland, you may begin.
Hello. I'm speaking against the District of Innovation. Should that be our focus during this pandemic? I watched several of Dr. Latham's town halls in which she answered questions beautifully. I applaud our successful food distribution and efforts that helped keep cafeteria workers and bus drivers working. In addition, the efforts put forth to find those lost children with real boots on the ground effort was very hopeful. As I have said numerous times, We need devices in children's hands, a safe and well-managed place for children who can't stay at home, and a volunteer network that operates in the virtual learning environment. These are essential. It is tragic that these three things are hanging out there. How are we innovating in-person classes? Will class sizes be less than 12? Will teachers rotate? Are partitions in place? Even with adequate PPE, is there properly upgraded ventilation? Will children use their devices in class to avoid sharing of books and other school supplies? Since there's no bubble, should we have contact sports before a safe vaccine? Will children, parents, staff, teachers have access to therapeutic counselors via video? Are teachers going to be retrained in classroom management during a public health and social justice crisis? Can teachers opt out in class or in-person in-service instruction? You want to be innovative during a pandemic when the very cornerstone of public health protocols have not been followed? I realize that these are tough problems impacted by chaotic supply chains, ever-changing and often obstructive state oversight. Let's tackle pressuring TEA to eliminate STAR for 2021. Let's stop pretending
Thank you,
there's
Dr.
not
Boglin.
going to be.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Bryant. Mr. Bryant, you may begin.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jonathan Bryant. I'm a teacher at Northside High School. Instead of wasting energy on the District of Innovation Plan, the board should focus on redoubling the efforts of the reopening task force. The task force should continue its sensible, phased reopening plan and at the same time organize its efforts around securing a massive cash infusion for the long-term structural changes needed for our new reality. The politicians who are now calling for a reckless reopening of schools are the same ones who withheld funds when schools faced cutbacks years ago. For years, Abbott and others have ignored teachers' demands for small class size and adequate funding. Had these demands been implemented, they would have created the structure needed right now in this crisis. HISD is the largest district in the state and seventh in the country. What we do here will set the standard for others to follow. In order to properly reopen and guarantee safety for the years to come, we will need to hire an army of permanent staff to facilitate safety protocols and to build the infrastructure needed to guarantee a safe environment, like small class size and proper ventilation. This will require a massive infusion of cash and resources, which by some estimates will cost the district up to $100 million each school year. How are we going to pay for this? One, we must demand that the governor secure greater federal funds for our schools and that he release rainy day state funds immediately. Two, we must demand a moratorium on the debt service HISD pays to banks. HISD will pay $370 million in debt service to banks this year alone. The banks got bailed out. Now they can afford to help us out. Third, we must demand that the corporations in our district that benefit from the labor of our students and families also foot the bill. We must insist that these millionaires and billionaires pay for needed supplies and provide us space in their underutilized buildings. And finally, while we're at it, let's call for an end to high-stakes testing and make better use of the millions paid to for-profit companies each year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruth Kravitz. Ms. Kravitz, you may begin.
Thank you so much. My name is Ruth Kravitz. I want to ask you to delay the vote to form a District of Innovation Committee until another time. It is bad timing in the middle of this double pandemic. Our priority right now should be reopening safely and reopening equitably. It is not time to be forming a DOI committee, and doing so sends the public the wrong message. I also want to thank Trustee Sung and Trustee Bluford Daniels for meeting with CVPE parents and students to talk about forming a police task force. We look forward to more meetings with other trustees. We are concerned. In June, at the height of the George Floyd protests at an HISD board meeting, Board President Sue Dygard stated she had formed a committee to make recommendations about policing and the disproportionate use of discipline on black students and other students of color in HISD schools. This committee has not yet formed. This committee has not yet met, and school is about to start. Students need you to follow through. When is the first meeting? How will the public engage in this important matter? At this time, everything we should be doing should be about safety and equity. How do we ensure that students of limited means have the support they need? Where are the funds to hire tutors to personalize instruction for students whose parents cannot afford to do so? How do we ensure that the support staff we're asking to return to school to pass out devices face-to-face are doing so with as much protection as possible for them and for the families picking up these devices? Thank you for delaying the start of school. We want to also ask you to use your muscle as the largest school district in Texas and tell the governor to do his job and to protect our students, protect our educators and our communities. So I ask you once again to put the DOI story on the side, delay the vote, and focus on what really matters right now. Thank you. We need your help.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Vincent Sanders. Mr. Sanders, you may begin.
Sanders, and I'm good afternoon. My name is Vincent Sanders, and I'm an HISD proud parent. I want you to consider the timing of today's decision to appoint a District of Innovation Committee and how proceeding with forming this District of Innovation Committee right now will look to the public. It's not the image that we want to project. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and right now the most important thing is to keep communities safe and alive. Right now, the way we in HISD are handling reopening is a wonderful example for all surrounding communities and districts. We want the public to know that safety is the most important thing on our minds in HISD. So I would like for you to consider pushing back this vote on a District of Innovation until we have a successful reopening and that safety protocols are in play and underway. In conclusion, the District of Innovation can wait, but the safety to protect our children, teachers, and staff cannot wait. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'll read the last speaker to F2, Ms. Coretta Fontenot. My name is Coretta Fontenot, and I'm asking that trustees vote no on item F2, which is the possible formation of a local innovation plan committee. I ask for trustees to focus your efforts on reopening safely based on scientific and medical data. This administration is forcing unfair choices without regard to what is really important. Helping our students and staff return whole and healed should be your top priority in the midst of this pandemic. Should this item pass, students will be returning to the classroom with uncertified laymen who lack the expertise to mitigate the trauma that we know students will bring to school post-COVID. I have received numerous calls from parents wanting to know if they should register their children in HISD, and from administrators asking what is HISD's plan for reopening. Creating an innovation plan committee during a global pandemic is irresponsible and should not be approved by trustees. Approval of this item could open Pandora's box in HISD by allowing uncertified laymen to teach students. Classroom instruction requires academic skill, social and emotional finesse, and an understanding of child pedagogy. Placing uncertified people in classrooms is not appropriate and can cause unintended consequences. A certified educator would know how to best support our students. When students return to in-person instruction, they deserve certified teachers delivering instructional content. Trustees, you have a moral imperative to vote this item down. Would you want your child taught by an uncertified person? It has no proven benefits to our students. It's an affront to students, paraprofessionals, social workers, and counselors in their emotional safety to vote to approve untrained personnel as deliverers of instructional material. I ask that you vote no on item F2 with our students' life skills in particular and staff safety and well-being in mind. We are going back to two speakers for item E3, and Ms. Jones will read those. First is Mr. Curtis Flood.
We disagree with your school opening plans and agree with the CDC and AAP. The benefits of children returning now to school far outweigh the negative consequences. Without the in-person learning environment, children are more at risk for depression, suicide, and drug abuse. In addition, there are many students who do not have safe home lives, and for them, school is a place where they are able to escape it. Many of these students often only eat due to reduced or free programs. In a district where nearly 80% of the students are economically disadvantaged, school is how they can end the cycle of poverty and improve their lives. While we respect some families and teachers will need a virtual option, this is not viable for students whose parents work, for students who do not have a safe or quiet home, and for English language learners and students receiving special services. It is untenable to foist a one-size-fits-all approach through October 19th when every student's situation is different and many are unable to be educated through virtual means. HISD admitted over 7,500 children never logged on for virtual instruction. Waiting for COVID-19 positivity rate metric to be below 5% is bogus. Current Houston positivity rates are not a fair estimate of the general public. While the numerator of positivity rate is the number of positive tests, the denominator is the number of total tests. But only persons with symptoms or direct exposure are allowed to be tested, not the general public. Let's say schools open and 2 teachers develop COVID-19 symptoms. If the 2 teachers test positive, their positivity rate is 100%. But if the entire school of 500 persons is tested and only the 2 teachers are positive, then the COVID-19 positivity rate is only 0.4%. If the positivity rate is high, more testing is needed to represent the general public. What metrics is HISD using to allow students to physically return to school? Transparency is demanded of the school board and interim superintendent. Houston families have been waiting for 5 months for straight answers. No more subjective opinions on COVID-19 inhibiting schools opening face-to-face. What are the objective metrics?
Thank you. And last is Jennifer Swalen. We will read her comment. She signed up for agenda item E3 and hearing of the community.
Why are we investing money in technology, hotspots, etc., when we know virtual learning is statistically less optimal than in classroom? The data available shows virtual learning will only widen the educational gap. Why not delay school until in-person and virtual options are both available? How is virtual learning the most cost-effective and proven method of education? The 5% positivity rate is bogus and only useful if an entire school population is tested. HISD is using subjective opinions to open schools. What happened to the scientific method? Please send objective guidelines on how and when schools will reopen. How will HISD aid in the anxiety accompanied with virtual learning? Stage fright is a real problem for children, and they should not be forced into learning on screens with an all eyes on me type environment. We've had 5 months to prepare for a safe return. What is HISD doing right now to prepare for a safe return inside of the classroom? Are plexiglass partitions being installed at the front desk and other high traffic areas as the CDC recommends? Perhaps if teachers were offered a 2020-2021 COVID-19 supply budget of $2,500 each semester for in-classroom learning, they would feel more confident to return knowing they can afford the proper PPE and not count on the district. I've heard teachers complain that in previous years, bathrooms lack toilet paper, hand soap, and paper towels. Schools do not supply Kleenex or hand sanitizer. All of these supplies should be in abundance regardless of COVID. Lastly, I read on the HISD website, the school my child attends receives about $3,300 per child. The average in Texas is $9,600. Where is the other $6,000 going? HOC comment. We disagree with your school opening plans and agree with the CDC and AAP. The benefits of children returning now to school far outweigh the negative consequences. Without the in-person learning environment, children are more at risk for depression, suicide, and drug abuse. In addition, there are many students who do not have safe home lives, and for them, school is a place where they are able to escape it.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers to agenda items.
Thank you, Ms. Dimmitt and Ms. Jones, for facilitating that for us, and thank you to all of our speakers this evening. We are now ready to move on to the agenda items. For the record, let it be reflected that after the agenda packet was printed, item A3 was revised and its attachment was added. The attachment to item K1 was revised. Item K3 was revised and its attachments were added. Item F5 was withdrawn prior to the meeting, and the original item F6 moved into the F5 position. Board policy requires trustees to excuse themselves and abstain from all discussion and votes pertaining to contracts that might involve a conflict of interest. As defined in board policy BBFA local a quote conflict of interest in any circumstance that could cast doubt on a trustee's ability to act with total objectivity with regard to the district's interests, unquote. So we are now going to consider items that were held for abstention and or discussion by board members. We're going to begin this evening with an item held for discussion, which is agenda item A3, discussion concerning the proposed revisions to the emergency constraint progress measures and progress monitoring calendar. The setting of goals and constraints and a theory of action are the main work of any school board upon which all of our other work is built. More importantly, it's upon which the administration builds their work. And it's also how a district holds its superintendent accountable is by monitoring the progress towards the goals and constraints. Back in April, the board voted to temporarily suspend our regular monitoring calendar due to COVID. And then shortly thereafter, we voted to enact these emergency constraints. The progress measures we had during the last several months ended their life cycle in August, and we asked the administration to bring us revised progress measures that will take us through the end of December. The board is going to be engaged in a series of workshops in September and October to develop our next generation of goals and constraints and a theory of action, work to be completed by the end of October, which these emergency constraints would then be, incorporated into that process. And then that our current trajectory is to vote on those by November. And then, as long as we have the metrics and the tools by which to monitor them, we will begin monitoring them in January. More importantly, those new goals and constraints that will come into effect later, they're not for discussion tonight, they will come into effect later, but just to give everybody, just an understanding of context here, those will be what the superintendent will use to build a strategic plan to accomplish those learning goals for our students. And also upon which future budgets, especially the one for 2021-22, will be built. So this is really core important work for us. So Dr. Lathan has presented to us these are revised emergency constraints. This is just being posted this evening for discussion. There have already been many questions addressed in the Q&A document by board members that has been posted publicly online. And we will be voting on it next Thursday, August 20th. And so the purpose this evening is to give some constructive feedback to the administration and discussion as board members. And our process this evening is going to be a little different because we have 11 progress measures. We are not posted to discuss the reopening plan. We are not posted to discuss the instructional continuity. Our focus is on these progress measures. And what we're going to do this evening, as I shared with all of the board members prior to the meeting, is that our first round of conversation this evening is I'm going to ask each of us to share with the administration one progress measure for which, we're like, hey, this really gets to what we're trying to see for this constraint, and then a progress measure for which we still might have a question or concern. And then in the second round, we'll handle it more traditionally. But I think it's important that we give some positive feedback on this, and we'll see what conversation is left when we're done. So I'm going to actually begin the conversation just to model, since this is such a new process for this conversation. And I just want to share, first of all, thank you, administration, for your hard work on this. I think they're much more robust. I know you've had much more time, as we've settled into COVID life. And the two, really, especially like progress measure 3.3, I think it is incredibly important that we are monitoring specific things for special education. And so I appreciate that you brought us a metric that is solely focused on that. And then progress measure 3.2, the one concern I have in that is it is focused on just grades 3 through 8. And I'm curious how we're going to be monitoring the engagement of learning in a similar way for our students in pre-K through grades 2 and also in high school. So I'm now going to open it up to the queue and turn over to the next board member who wants to share similar feedback on 2 different progress measures.
Madam President?
Yes.
Madam President?
Yes.
I thought I was going to get an opportunity to try to give a high-level overview.
You were. My apologies. I was working off of.
You did a great job of modeling. Let's give you the positive. Great job of modeling. So class, make sure you remember what she modeled after I give you this overview.
Dr. Lath, I'm going to point out this is something we're going to need to work on. I need these scripts and we're going to have to work together earlier. So those kinds of things that we discussed, I have the opportunity to actually get them into my script. Because we get these bumps every month. And so if we can work together with the staff on that process, I think it will really streamline these kinds of hiccups we have in our meetings. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. So, trustees, once again, thank you so much for adopting these emergency constraints last spring and for the opportunity to present revised progress measures to you today. Just want to give you a high-level overview, not only to the board, but to also our community and constituents. These progress measures are to, of course, respond to the emergency constraints. It is not the only work that we as a team in this district are doing as we open up the 2020-21 school year. Under emergency constraint number 1, overall, we set targets 25% as you look at progress measure 1.1. It's a 25% increase over last year this time, and we're factored in the new additional 70 new wraparound specialists that will be added. Our data source, of course, is our Purple system that we utilize for wraparound services. We also changed the wording in progress measure 1.1 from services connected to interventions. And so you'll note that there's a change there. As it relates to 1.2, same thing, we made some changes as it relates to identifying who could document the contacts with students. And so we've increased the number of staff or identified positions to do that. We'll be providing training to our principals also, which is a little bit different from the spring. So we looked at our goals, progress measures from the spring, and we made adjustments based on how we responded to the data and what the data shared with us. Everything, of course, will run through our Power School system, which is called HISD Connect. Addressing the safety needs of all students, emergency constraint number 2. I know, trustees, you had a question about dates. As students enroll in HISD, the goal is for them to complete the courses within 2 weeks of enrollment. And we enroll students all throughout the school year. That's the same also for the course that staff members are going to be required to take as they are enrolled or start employment with the school district. They have a certain amount of time to complete that compliance course. All of our campuses will have a school nurse for the upcoming school year. We do have about 10 or 11 nursing vacancies, and we're working a little bit high. Okay. About 17 nursing vacancies, so we are working to get those nursing vacancies filled. But the goal is for every campus, unless they're on a shared a property where the nurse can go between 2 buildings, that is the goal there. Once again, the information for the student course and also the staff course is rolled out through our hub system. We also have a new system that we've updated through HISD Connect as it relates to the nurse wellness checks that will be captured in what we call Health Office Anywhere. That's a third-party app that feeds directly into HISD Connect so that we can make sure we are providing the board with accurate data and information. And that's under our nurse wellness checks. Meals distributed to students. I know, trustees, some of you had a question about how did we arrive at all these various calculations. And so we did provide that information in the Q&A that was not only posted publicly today, but sent out to all of our trustees. Our goal is to continue to feed our students. In fact, tomorrow we have a major giveaway at NRG from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Please come early, though, so we can make sure we can take care of the needs of our families. So a large giveaway tomorrow at NRG. Also, just a reminder, when we start school on Tuesday, September 8th, we move to the National School Lunch Program. That is another set of guidelines that we must follow as it relates to feeding students. Past several months, we've fed students and families. Engagement of all students. I know a question came up from trustees. It looks like we're showing you grades 3 through 8. Keep in mind several things. Number one, when the board adopts its new goals in November, for implementation in January, those House Bill 3 goals are for elementary, and then also the third one is CCMR. Of course, you can have a fourth one if you choose. And so we were mirroring that to start getting the information as we get prepared for the goals that the board might select in January. Once again, we are monitoring progress and student achievement pre-K-12 for all of our students. Tier 2 students also will be progress monitored. Like I said, you see this as it relates to the goal for 3rd through 8th grade students. But we want to know where the gaps as it relates to COVID, the slides were academically for all of our students. And so you'll have that information. The window, the reason it said screening on October 9th and February the 5th, is the assessment window is September 14th through October 9th. Then the information will be presented to the board in November, and then again, the information will be presented to the board in March as it relates to the MOI results. We've already addressed the special education. Thank you for pointing out, based on the data, we needed to address progress monitoring, make sure we're providing training to our principals and teachers so that they know how to document a student's IEPs appropriately to monitor students' progress. As it relates to staff safety, ensuring that our buildings, once we are back face-to-face, that we're able, if a positive case is reported on a campus, we're able to get that campus clean and turn around and prepared to reopen in a timely manner. Also, the reporting safety procedure incidents, those calls will be made throughout to our Business Operations Center. And that's how we will document it. That information will then be pushed out to the supervisor as it relates to that particular department of campus. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Okay, I'm now going to open it up to my colleagues. Again, reiterating what our process is going to be for the first round, and then we can move on to the second one. So, Trustee Cruz.
Okay, so I'm glad to see several of the emergency constraints that we're documenting and centrally documenting and really streamlining that. I know that'll help not just with reporting to us, but as you guys look at data as well. A question I have on emergency constraint 3, so 3.1, the percent of students documented as having access to a device. So what I would like to know is, how does having access to a device tell me that students are engaged in learning?
So let's think about these. And like we said, we know they're true priorities as it relates to these emergency constraints. But if you think about it from this standpoint of this emergency constraint, 3.1, number one, because we are starting out virtually, students must have that laptop or that device. And then how are we going to monitor their engagement? It's based on those progress measures of academics. When we administer the assessment to the students at the beginning of the school year, and then we progress monitor them throughout. But number one, that's the first step. Think about it from a standpoint of school supplies. You must have that textbook, or for us right now, it's the device. And then we're going to monitor their academic achievement.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Trustee Dygard, to that, just for clarity, or no?
Let's do this first round, and then we'll go to do that. Okay.
Got it.
Trustee Fernandez.
Thank you, Trustee Dygard. Dr. Lathan, I appreciate your emergency constraint progress measures 2.1 and 4.1 for the COVID safety courses, especially because I've talked to you before, and I know that they're going to be modified for student grade levels and their ages. I know we talked about the pre-K one being super cute. What I have more questions about is 3.2. I know that you already touched on it a little bit about not having pre-K to second grade on the progress measures. However, I would like to know if we can just add another one for pre-K to 2, so that we can make sure that we are monitoring them as a board.
Dr. Lathan, do you want to respond or should I move on to the next person?
Oh, I can respond. Like I said, we are monitoring that, but as it relates to the progress measure that we selected, we really wanted to work and focus on those on grades 3 through 8. But as I stated, we will be administering all the assessments that we normally administer to those grade levels would still be administered and then progress measured as it relates to student achievement for us as a district.
Trustee Sang?
But we've made a note.
Thank you. So for all of these progress measures, what I'm looking for, similar to Trustee Cruz, is the progress measure predictive of the constraint? Is it going to tell us, hey, if we're hitting this target metric, then we're hitting, the target that we've set? And then also, is it ambitious? So the progress measures that I think do a good job of that are actually the device ones. So 3.1, right, from 0% to 100%. It's ambitious. It's and it's predictive. That's a necessary tool that has hampered students' learning, and I think that's meets this criteria. Also, the special education. You provided to us the percentage of students documented and meeting that progress before. Going up to 90% is going to be a big job. That's ambitious. And it's absolutely needed if we're engaging all students in learning. So those are warm. Where I wonder with some of these, for instance, meal distribution, 2.3, almost done, my dear. This kind of looks like a status quo projection, right? So in calculating the number of meals, we looked at the different settings. We said, hey, we've done this before. We're going to project the exact same number going forward. At least that's how I read it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I wonder if we want to challenge ourselves more, right? And if 42 meals per student on free or reduced lunch per semester is what our kids need, or if they're going to need a little bit more food, if we can figure out how to do that. Done. Thanks.
All right. I can respond, Trustee Dygard? Oh.
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. Okay. So thank you, Trustee Song. So as it relates to the meal services and the calculations, believe me, I think we've demonstrated that since March the 13th, that we are definitely meeting the needs, nutritional needs of our students. Remember, as we start back on September 8th, we're still talking about an uncontrolled situation because it's all about, and when we're in a face-to-face, we can control because we are pushing and moving the students through an actual lunch line or delivering food to a classroom. This is totally different because it is the unknown. So we've utilized, like I said, based on looking back over these past several months, that's how we arrived at the calculation. If by chance, and so one thing that we're doing different that we did not do between March and up to 2 weeks ago is, like I said, going out to those apartment complexes. So we're watching and monitoring throughout, even outside of these listed progress measures of ways we need to engage and reach students. And so, like I said, it might appear on paper to you that it's a small number, but we really know and believe that not only are we going to reach this goal, we're going to exceed this goal as it relates to meeting our nutritional needs for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. I don't see any more colleagues. Oh, Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Not to be too long, I love the fact that you said, well, Trustee Dygard, you said something positive of what we liked about the progress measures. I love the fact that you are out there on the ground, boots on the ground, trying to reach these kids and get them to be engaged in the process. And so kudos to you. Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers in the queue for this first round, we're now going to proceed as quickly as, Trustee Flynn-Villaseca.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much, Dr. Lathan, for working with your team to develop these updated progress measures. I have one of the things that I liked is that I know like when we had gone through the process before, just Lone Star governance in general, the values of the board tend to show up through the constraints, and this is a little bit different because it's an emergency situation. So a lot of them are sort of feel like goals with solid baselines and where we're desired to go so that we can progress monitor them. So I appreciate that. And one of the questions that I had was let's see. I know Trustee Hernandez on EC3 mentioned the pre-K through 2, and I'm also was curious about high school for that as well. So how are we monitoring progress for high school students beyond 8th grade?
So thank you. We are also monitoring, like I said, those tier 2 students, those students who did not pass based on the previous STAR information. So they didn't pass their STAR EOCs. Those students we will be progress measuring, also progress monitoring their achievement also. And so we will be administering the BOY and MOY to them. So they will be in that category of students. Like I said, we talked about 3-8 here, but we're also looking across the district at all of those students that were not successful, whether they were pre-K or K1 students this year, pre-K K1 students this year, and then our high school students. But we will also be progress monitoring them as well.
Okay, we are now, since there's no further trustees on this round, we are now going to proceed as quickly as we possibly can. We have 11 of these. If everybody speaks every trustee speaks for 1 minute, on each of these, not including administrative response, it's an hour and a half plus. So I'm just going to go one by one. If there are any further questions or comments from my colleagues on these progress measures, progress measure 1.1, and let's try and just get into the queue as quickly as we possibly can. If you have something that you want to ask, progress measure 1.1. Progress measure 1.2. Trustee Sung?
Sorry, I was actually trying to get to the chat for 1.1. So
chat for 1.1, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I appreciate the benchmark from last year. So last year we had 628,000 interventions. And so for the coming year, fall semester, we've set 353,000, right, as the goal. So I'm wondering, I asked, is this reflective of the need? And I was wondering, is this, we're growing our staff, right? And we have greater needs probably than pre-COVID for our students. So is this target kind of in that sweet spot of being ambitious and challenging to the organization, but also achievable?
It is challenging to the organization, and it is our goal is to achieve it. We pre-COVID, I think we've sometimes people forget about the city of Houston and Houston Independent School District, the students that we serve. Our students were in great need pre-COVID. We know COVID has definitely added to that, but we do feel if you compare to this time last year when we set the goal, and this is for half a year this target is for half of the year, that we can, even with the increased wraparound specialists, but also keep in mind one thing I omitted at the opening, those additional 70 campuses that do not have a wraparound specialist will still be paired to also have someone to provide supports to them.
Could I follow up? Is the percent increase in the services proportionate to the percent increase in the number of wraparound specialists?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not apples to apples. But like I said, overall, when we factored in, we're adding these additional wraparound specialists and looking at how we provide these interventions. That's how we set that 25% target increase for September through December.
Oh, this is a 25% increase?
Yes, that's what I shared earlier.
Okay. All right, I apologize, I missed that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sung. I have actually a question I meant to ask about this as well. In how does this ensure that there are no, it's the delta, are there unmet interventions that are needed? For example, maybe there are 500 that are needed, but we're providing 353. And so I'm trying to understand how this tells me that we are meeting the needs of all of the students that have been identified in purple as needing an intervention.
So, Trustee Dygard, on page 1 of the Q&A, that was one of your questions. Those last 2 questions are kind of your questions. How many tickets are open in purple, and where are we not meeting the needs of students? Because we talked about that. And so overall, if you look at the number of outstanding tickets that are open currently and the services that we've provided, not only since March, but overall as a district, when we are made aware of that a student is in need, or when we do our own reach out, and I'll give you an example of students within reach, where we're trying to reach those students that were not engaged. This week we started with that campaign. We sent out letters, and we are starting to hear back from families. So when that need is brought to our attention, or we find it on our own, we are going about and meeting the needs of our students. Now, do some things slip through the cracks? That happens anywhere in life. But our goal is to try to reach and provide services to every child that needs them.
Okay, and my apologies. I was looking at the emergency constraint progress measure questions, and that's why I missed that. So my apologies on that. Okay, so next progress measure is 1.2. Seeing no colleagues requesting to speak, let's move on to 1.3. 1.4, or excuse me, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 3.1. Trustee Cruz.
Okay, so a follow-up to my previous question. So, Dr. Lathan, I understand what you're saying, that the kids need, they can't engage in virtual learning if they don't have the device. And I understand that. But my question is, how does this progress measure tell me that all students are engaged in learning? Because the kid can have the device, but they still have to turn it on and wake up in the morning and, get with their teacher or do their assignments. So I don't feel like, that's my question. So please, if you can.
Yes, if you remember, engagement is also monitored by logging in the percent of time that students not only are completing their assignments, but when students are logging in, and we can measure that because we can measure engagement, we can measure the length of time they're in a particular, let's say, instructional software or intervention program. We can measure that, and we can pull that data to see if students are engaged. So it's just not about, I'm going to give you a device and that's it. We have to still monitor, and we have to also verify attendance. If you recall last spring, we did not have to verify attendance. We didn't have to verify engagement. We had to stand up an instructional continuity plan. We will be taking attendance. It will be coded in our HISD Connect system, just like we do when we're face-to-face, because all of that information also is how we will generate funding. And so that's how based on our funding, based on the information that we have to put into HISD Connect, that's one level of measuring the engagement or participation. The other will be through academic monitoring of academic achievement.
Yes. So everything you just told me, I feel like is not reflected in that 3.1. I mean, yes, the kid will get the device, and I have confidence that you will deliver those devices to the kids that need them, but I don't think that the progress measure is reflective of the kid actually engaging, like all the other things that you just explained. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Flynn-Villaseca.
All right, I have a question on the date. So I know, like at our last, I think it was a gender review when we were talking about the instructional continuity plan. I know this isn't that, but this does the technology in the hands of students so that they're able to engage in continued learning. And it's one of the bullets that's here. So I'm wondering the date, the rationale around that, should it be a little bit more rigorous by the end of the first 6 weeks, for instance? I know we want to get that one-to-one tech. Some of it is out of our control since we're competing for devices, all districts and other entities across the U.S. But what could we do to maybe to speed that up?
Thank you for that question as it relates to dates. Remember, everything still is around enrollment ongoing. So our goal is, of course, to meet this September target of trying to get every device in every child's hand because of the fact that that is a requirement as it relates to operate in a virtual environment or provide them an opportunity to go to a location that has a device. But as students enroll, we still need to provide devices to those students that enroll throughout the course of the first semester when we're measuring this progress measure.
You good, Trustee Flynn-Villaseca? Okay. Emergency constraint 3.2. Trustee Sung?
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Lathan, so if students are absent for a test, like the beginning of the year screener or the middle of the year screener, then are they omitted from this metric?
They are omitted from the metric, but we still collect that data. So if they're outside of the window, let's say the BOY. So if they don't enroll until October 11th. And so they're not captured in the BOY, but we do administer them the MOY, but it just will not be the data that's reported to you. We're looking at the cohort of students that take the BOY and then also the MOY. But once again, we measure student achievement for all of our students.
Okay. I do know we didn't measure. I'm just wondering, given the challenges of administering tests virtually, right? Like, what % of students are actually going to participate in both of these? Yeah. I guess we'll know soon.
We will, and it will be new for us. So, it's going to be new.
Yeah. And then I asked in the Q&A, and thank you for answering so many of my questions. I really appreciate it. But I still didn't understand. So as a follow-up, when we say, so last year, right, 50% of our students in 3rd to 8th grade made this progress in reading. What does that mean, though, given that it's a percentile rank? Like, what does it mean to make progress in percentile rank?
Okay, so I'm also, Dr. Matney is on. We're going to make sure that the information is correct to you. So, Dr. Matney? Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you for
Explain to me for percentile rank how everybody can move up in percentile rank.
So they move up. The biggest key is these are nationally normed. The Renaissance is nationally normed. So we're not just looking at norming within HISD. So when you look at students across the country, our students could actually all move up depending on how those other students. So although it's
I get it. That answers my question.
Okay. Help you? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, perfect. And then this year is a weird year, not just us, but nationally. So we're still nationally ranking in real time this year, or are they using past year data too?
What we've heard from them is that they are still continuing with the national norming. They have the capability of administering the assessment virtually. Obviously, many districts did participate in the last spring. So they were able to get some good data on participation rates and how students do and work out some kinks during that process.
Okay, there's the potential that what this tells us this year is different. Like, I think the hope of this board is that we keep students on track, right? Like this year versus last year. But if everybody, across the country is falling behind, then we could look like we're staying on track in terms of the percentile ranking, but not be, right? If we're norming against the whole country in a really weird year. Is there that potential? I just want to make sure I understand what this means, what this metric means.
Yeah, so it's an interesting situation and question that you brought up, because when we look at everyone administering, we're going to have some students across the country that are administering face-to-face. We're going to have some students that are being administered this assessment face-to-face, even within Texas and even within HISD. So we've got some of those factors, and that's where our Department of Student Assessment is doing a great job putting together guidance for our staff on how to actually ensure that students are participating. But when we look at our changes from beginning of year to middle of year, we're also looking at the past year's progress for students. So what Renaissance Learning does is look at past years, beginning of year to middle of year, past years, beginning of year to end of year, to actually set those norms and those targets for where each of those levels sit.
Okay, so there is past year data in there as well. Like
Correct.
We're not, data.
Right.
Okay.
We're not just looking at this year in isolation.
I got it. I'm good. Thank you very much, Dr. Matney.
Trustee Hernandez?
A lot of my questions related to the growth, so thank you, Trustee Sung, for asking that. Most of my questions have been answered. I just would like to reiterate that, like, as a board member, I feel like I understand that the administration is going to be tracking data for outside of 3 to 8, but as a board member, I would like to also be able to see information for students in pre-K 2 and in high school, because I believe that's information that is useful to understand where the district is at.
So noted. Thank you.
Anything further, Trustee Hernandez? Trustee Cruz?
Okay, so trying to follow up. So I read the Q&A answers. So the 50% for reading and the 58% for math. It says 2019-20 baseline is 50% for reading. And so is that what we were last year? That was the baseline? Like, how did we get 50 and 58? I read the answers, but I still don't understand. So please explain. Thank you.
Is she on mute?
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Matney?
I wasn't sure if you wanted to answer, if you wanted me to take it. Yes, ma'am. Those are our baseline for those same grade levels from last year. So those are what we're anticipating, what we're expecting. The stretch for this is that even through COVID and lack of a typical, what we're used to learning environment throughout the spring, is that we'll still level set from beginning of year to middle of year this year.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Dygard. Dr. Lathan. So my questions can go for both 2.2 and 3.2. How will teachers proctor BOYs and MOYs via Microsoft Teams? Is it going to be to 120 kids? Is it going to be one student one-on-one? Especially since teachers will still be teaching.
Right. So similar to what we normally do, and actually there's guidance for teachers and training that will be provided by our student assessment department. So similar when we're face-to-face, you have a certain period that you're administering that particular assessment and a certain amount of time based on the students on your caseload. So if, each period or a certain subject area, you're doing that administration, but that guidance will be provided to teachers and principals the same way we do when we're face-to-face.
Okay. So just for clarification, so we have a testing window for the BOY or the MOY. They'll have days 1, 2, 3, and 4, and between X, Y, and Z times, they'll have time to administer?
I think, so let me just say it again, and then if I didn't say it, if that doesn't answer your question, ask me again. So teachers will receive the testing window information. They'll receive the guidance on when they should administer the test to their students. Let's go with a third grade reading teacher. And so that teacher will receive, here's the testing window, here's the testing schedule, when this should be administered to the student. The student and the parent will also receive their schedule of when they need to log in for that test administration. So similar to when we're face-to-face, we're assessing during that time, and then the next day, for that next period, they go back, they're teaching virtually and following their schedule.
Okay, and so the guidance will be provided for teachers, though, on how to proctor.
Oh, yes. This is, like I said, this is going to be new for us, but that guidance will be provided as we work our way through administering online assessments for the first time.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan.
3.3. 4.1, 4.2, Trustee Sung? Oh, Trustee Sung, 4.1.
Yes, thank you. I can't type as fast as you talk. So for 4.1, could you just tell us a little bit about the COVID safety course and why we believe that this is going to be predictive? If staff take this, and students actually, in 2. whatever it was, the similar one, 2.1, that if students and staff take these courses, then that's going to improve their practice, I presume it is. We want to make sure they're following health guidelines.
Yes, and this is similar to our other, compliance courses that we require as employees to take, and like I said, similar to the students, but reminding staff about wearing their mask, washing their hands frequently, physical distancing, and we know the more we see information, the more we retain it. But of course, that is also follow up in staff meetings, follow up in class meetings with teachers following up with students after they've completed the course. But this is the first step that levels across the district so every employee understands these are the expectations. We've said it and announced it through our reopening plan, through our CDC plan, but now we're also making sure that employees have an opportunity to interact with a course that provides them that information as well.
Okay, so these are really tailored to, like the student and the teacher ones are tailored to like what students need to be doing and then what teachers need to be doing in their particular environment.
Yes, and kind of age appropriate, if you think about it from that standpoint, age appropriate also.
Okay, good. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
4.2, 4.3, going once. Oh, 4.2.
I'm a slow typer, sorry. So here, 4.2, this seems like a constraint that is predictive of limiting student learning loss, right? So I have two questions about this. So one is about like whether it fits here, right? So it's, if a campus is closed, we're going to reopen it in 5 calendar days or less, right? And I can see why you would want to do that, presuming that it was safe to do so. But how is that predictive of health and safety? It seems like that would be more tied to learning than to health and safety.
I think that's a great question, and it actually ties to both. But going into a clean building, once we know that there's been exposure of someone testing positive, also from the sense of just a relief. And I'll give you our own examples of here when we were made aware. Immediately, my first question, to Ms. Jolivet, okay, when has the building been clean or has it been clean? And the same questions across the district as we're closing facilities. And so it is important not only to get the buildings clean immediately, but to get them reopened when we are face to face with students so that students can continue learning face to face.
Okay. And, when I think about the challenge of making sure our schools are safe and healthy, I don't know what documents that you're referencing, but, I don't know if there's like a public health guidelines that you were referencing. And I would think that for these progress measures, we would want the metrics that are most tied to mitigating the risk of COVID exposure. So,
it is. We have, through our committees and our work, we have utilized those documents, but we also know, and just this morning I heard on the news, the head of the CDC is urging, this is what every American can do right now, wear your mask, wash your hands frequently, physical distance. So we are utilizing those documents and those metrics and to mitigate, because these are the things that we know we need to do. So we definitely have taken that into consideration. We have members of our committee that send us documents and articles as the latest information is coming out. We are being updated on that information.
Okay. All right. Well, my other question here is about the not decrease from 100% to less than 100%. So the goal is for this to not dip below 100% between August 24th and December 18th. Is that right?
Yes, yes, ma'am. That is correct.
Okay. So the way this is written, it seems like you might still meet this constraint even if we had like a U, right? Like if it. So anyway, the wording seems a little bit awkward to me. But
Did you freeze, Trustee Sung?
No, I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay.
The wording seems awkward. But the intent is to say it will not fall below 100%, right? Between, like, during this time frame. So, okay, I think we're in agreement. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Dygard, Dr. Lathan. So I guess my question is 4.2, and it's tied to the training that our HIV employees have received thus far. So Dr. Lathan, right now, we have a certain segment of employees that are coming back. How exactly, have they received that training yet?
The compliance course is being released on Monday. It's ready. It'll go out on Monday. It goes out through an e-blast to all employees that they can sign up, but it's already in their OneSource guide of all the courses that we have to take.
And I know this is going to be a two-part question, and the other part might have to be answered later because I don't know if it ties into the 4.2. But so they haven't taken those the safety compliance course yet. They're back on campuses. Can you explain why certain employees are coming back to campuses and some aren't?
Yes, I think that's a great question to ask. And just keep in mind that we've communicated to all of our staff our expectations around, like I said, wearing a mask, physical distancing, washing their hands appropriately. So that information has been pushed out. But as we looked at make progress measures around, that's when we develop the course. We do have employees we have employees cleaning buildings. We are deploying devices. We are enrolling students. So on a limited basis across the district, we are still in operation right now. And as you think about it, we don't have a choice as it relates to not enrolling students. And that's crucial for us as we think about our finances and moving forward. Some of our families will do the online registration. They'll do it. But some of our families are used to being able to go up to a school building. But like I said, everything is being, we're physically distancing, but we are trying to reach out to families. So we don't have full, buildings full of people, but some of our facilities are open on a limited basis so we can take care of registration. High schools are deploying out their laptops. This is the time of year that they do that, and they have schedules that they've posted and shared with their families. And then high schools are also taking care of registrations.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. I know there was some confusion. I just wanted to point out that the 4.2, I really would urge that our employees do that as soon as possible, specifically. And I understand that, our kids have to come and pick up their laptops and register too. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. Next is Trustee Flynn-Villaseca.
Yeah, so wondering if 4.2 and also 4.3, if they are, again, predictive of what the overall constraint says. I'm curious as to whether or not there should be something incorporated around preventive measures, because I imagine that there's a lot of readiness things that are going into place right now. I don't know if there are components from the guidelines that are referenced in both 4.2, I think 4.3, if the team has put together an opening checklist or a rubric or something of that nature that maybe includes ventilation and something a little bit more specific that helps with preventive measures.
And I've made a note of that, Trustee Villaseca, and we'll talk about that with our team. But some of those things that you mentioned, yes, but we'll flush it out a little bit more, okay?
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Also, another example would be contact tracing or like a daily check-in on your, like self-check.
So we actually will be administering, and everybody's smiling when they have a mask on. You can't tell from the few people that are here. So we will be administering contact tracing as it relates to our employees. We actually will use a third party to do that. And then our school nurses will handle it from a student perspective. We did not want to overwhelm our nurses by having them to do both. And so third party for all employees will handle that. And then our nurses will handle it for students, and then we'll have that information that doesn't violate privacy to be able to share.
Absolutely, much appreciated. Yeah, and then that also, the guidelines for the CDP things, it's not just for staff, but also for students. I know we have two different constraints around staff and students, but yes, one and the same. Thank you.
Next is Trustee Bluford Daniels, and then we have one more progress measure, and I just want to do a quick little time check. It is 6:25. So we are on track if we are really focused to be done by 7 o'clock, which would be 2 hours. Trustee Bluford Daniels.
I just had one more question for clarity regarding the concern for the ventilation system. What was the frequency of that change for the air filters that we have scheduled?
3 months.
So is there an opportunity once we return to brick and mortar to increase that frequency from 3 months to perhaps, because we don't know where we're going to go. We're in code red right now. So at least when we initially go back into the building, that we can have it initially more often?
Excuse me 1 second. I want to remind our colleagues we are not posted to talk about the plan. We are posted to talk about these progress measures. So I'd like legal. Are we still within bounds here? Frequency of changing air filters. Are we still within bounds on progress measures?
I think it's in a 4.2.
If a trustee or the superintendent can find a way to bring it within discussion of what you're measuring in the constraint or the progress measure.
Okay, so Trustee Bluford Daniels, if you can bring it into the context of the conversation, please.
I'll do it.
It was actually sort of a follow-up to what Villaseca, the points that she was making under 4.2.
Okay.
I've made a note, and we, like I said, we'll take it back, and because, like I said, we're going by those different recommendations, but we've made a note to get an update as it relates to that, and then when we do our update to through our CDP, we will share that information. But it is tied into this.
Thank you.
Trustee Sung?
I'll make a connection. It actually could be, like, I'm not saying it might be the best one, but it could be a potential progress measure, right? Like if important to our strategy is making sure that air quality is well ventilated, then the number of times there are changes in an hour or frequently changing with air filters could be a potential metric.
Thank you, Trustee Sung. Seeing no one further for 4.2, our last one is 4.3. Going once, going twice. Do I hit the gavel? Done with progress measures. Okay, moving on. Thank you all so much. 4.2, Trustee Santos.
Thank you, President Dygert. It's kind of applicable to all of them. It's just, would employees, Dr. Lathan, be able to utilize learning centers? Like if they wanted to go and say, hey, student A, would you meet up because you're having trouble with blah, blah, blah? Or could, they access the learning centers to help students out?
So that's a great question. The learning centers, students will be assigned to the learning centers based on the students that do not have a device. And then we will take it from there as it relates to progress management, but not a place to meet up. We're talking about some other options, but those learning centers will be, because we have still control the number of students, the number of staff that are interacting. And so if a teacher has a student that they need to provide additional support or in need of additional support, they need, when they are in conversations with their principals, just like we do face-to-face, then we will get the student the academic tutor. So that information will be shared through their team meetings as we generate a list of students that need support. But great question.
Okay, and then that leads me to my second question, which is teachers that want to return to campuses to teach virtually from their classroom. Is that, I believe you answered that and you said it would be a possibility or a campus-based decision, but I want to defer to you for that one.
So
is this related to the progress measure?
It ties into student engagement, and it can tie into 2.1 and 2.
Thank you.
3.1 and 3.2 as it relates to teacher engagement with student engagement virtually. And so we are, gathering that information, but some of it will be based on a campus by campus decision, just based on the health concerns of the staff for that particular campus and what's going on. So the learning centers will be identified as district-wide, and these are the locations. And then some schools, there are some teachers that will go in and engage from their classrooms.
Oh, awesome. And would the teachers be able to bring their children if they needed to?
We've talked about that. We're still, so I got it. You see them looking at me, even though they have on masks, I see them rolling their eyes at me. We've talked about it. We are working on the conditions in order to make that happen, because there were some concerns. I said yes. I'm telling the truth. I said yes, but we still have to balance that out with staff concerns, and so we're working on that.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. These are very hard decisions, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, we are concluded with a 3. Dr. Lathan will take our questions and comments back, and if it's deemed there are any revisions that might or tweaks that might be necessary, we will see those Monday when this is posted. Our vote is on Thursday, 5 p.m. August 20th on these progress measures. We are now moving on to the items held from our consent agenda. Trustees, the deadline to pull items from consent. All items start on consent. The deadline to pull was Monday, August 10th at 8 a.m. by sending an email to Ms. Trin. Trustees requested the following items to be held from the consent agenda: I6 and J1. So the first item held for discussion is agenda item I6, approval of the August general fund budget amendment. I believe Trustee may I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Wait, time out. I'm going to respectfully ask the board if y'all would allow me to put in F2. I'm compelled by the speakers tonight to change my vote on that. So please and thank you.
So when we get to the consent agenda part, Trustee Santos, you can make a motion to do that. And if there's a second and such, we'll go through that process. So right now we are on agenda item I6. We have a motion and a second. Trustee Santos, you had requested this item to be pulled from for discussion. You have 1 minute for your questions or comments.
Thank you. And I got a chance just a little bit to talk to Dr. Lathan about this, about making an amendment to possibly bring back the $4.6 million of the amendment that I did last month. And with her guidance, and only with her guidance and the will of the board, the reason why I'm asking this is because when we have PTOs that have the means to be able to provide certain things for their classrooms, we're going to have air purifiers and whatever else that PTOs can provide. If we could do this for our most vulnerable schools, so that way we can have like an average or a mean, much like the enrollment/ADA idea that I had, we could use that money to give to our most vulnerable population through in a global pandemic. So I'm going to ask Dr. Lathan if that $4.6 million, if we could find that anywhere, specifically with air purifiers in mind. I've been reading a little bit on them. And if any of my colleagues have any ideas, I'm more than welcome to hear them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. Trustee Sung, are you in the queue on this?
Yes, please.
Okay, Trustee Sung.
The science on COVID is changing very quickly, and what we see is that now the science is established that the air is a vector for COVID. So COVID is airborne. That means there's been a lot of discussion in the news, but also by epidemiologists about the importance for improved air quality. And so, you mentioned, Dr. Lathan, that air filtration is very important. That was in the Q&A. I hope that as we are looking across the district, if you see that there are schools, I know we have old schools, new schools. If you find there are schools where the existing air filtration rates are not fast enough, if rooms need air purifiers, if we need to be putting in UV light and air handlers, I hope you won't hesitate to come back to the board with an additional board amendment. Also, I had a question about whether the newly announced Harris County Fund for internet and laptops, if that would also be mitigating our need to spend our dollars here as proposed to amend tonight.
Okay, so I want to respond to Trustee Santos and Trustee Song, and also Chief Gilhousen to respond to the piece as it relates to the county. So it actually don't need an amendment for us as it relates to the purifiers and the other things that we need. Whatever we need to do for our campuses to ensure that they're safe as it relates to the air quality, we will do that. If it's an expense outside of what has already been appropriated in the budget, just like we're doing tonight, we would be bringing that back to the board in a future budget amendment. So I don't want you to think, Trustee Santos, that we would not do that. We would do that, but we would just be bringing it back. But tonight, under the circumstances, we are asking for the technology purchase or the amount in advance because we were able to gather that information. So I just want you to know that's going to be taken care of as it relates to when we start bringing back more and more students and staff. Now I want to address the information as it relates to the funding that the county appropriated around technology as it relates to Trustee Song's question. Chief Reed.
Good evening. We have been in discussions with the county about providing some funds for devices. We think right now it's somewhere around $4 million would be a share amount that they would help us with. That has not been signed. That has not been, no one said this is the number. Nothing's been agreed to, right? But right now we think that's potentially where it is. That's allowed us to actually increase the number of devices that we can purchase. But we are still in the middle of those discussions with them, as well as whatever they contribute, the state then will match dollar for dollar as well. So the numbers right now are still moving.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Trustee Adams.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent, I have a question. I don't know if this question fits here on this budget item, but if it's not, let me know and redirect me. Because I thought I was going to be discussing a progress measure I was going to hold, but based on the air purifiers and everything that's going on, and I think earlier you mentioned if we know that someone was in the building and we find out that it was someone had COVID, had been exposed, and they was in a building, and the students, if they had to be moved out for cleaning, would that affect our budget any? Would they have to go home? Is there like a time limit that they have to go home? How would that affect the budget?
Great question, Trustee Adams. So if a student, or if we have to quarantine a student or students and staff, the students would then the next day actually go online and start learning remotely. So it kind of in and out. So if we start out face to face and we have to quarantine a group, then they have to log on the next day and follow their virtual learning schedule. And
so they'll still get that budget, that money for them, for their attendance and all that. That won't affect anything for us to do any adjustments or anything with this.
As long as they're logging in, engaged, and we have them, those students, and they show up. Look, Chief Reed was ready to go ahead and jump in, Chief Reed. So, yes, as long as we have them. And like I said, that is our concern right now, even as we look at our budget, is we must, like I said, not only locate those students that were not engaged in the spring, but everyone that is projected to be on our rolls. We need those students logged in on that first day of September 8th, and that's why we're doing everything we can to reach parents and students now. And as I've shared with principals, and I'll be sharing with them again on Monday morning during our principals meeting, if those students don't come back, it impacts our budget. And people will say, okay, it won't impact us the next year. But that's next year, and that's people, because the most of our budget is in what? Salaries. And we're trying to not have to be able to lay people off and do things like that.
Okay, because then to follow with that with our budget, and that means that no one in HISD whatsoever, if this happens, no one is, everyone can fall in line with letting go salaries. No one is covered, but only those contract employees only.
Exempt.
That is exempt. There you go. I couldn't think the word. Thank you. I could not think the word.
That is correct, Trustee Adams. That is correct.
That is correct, Trustee Adams. Thank you. I could not think the word. Thank you. I could not think the word. That is correct, Trustee Adams. That is correct, Trustee Adams. That is correct, Trustee Adams. That is correct. Wow. Okay. Thank you. How many times we said thank you? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Trustee Villaseca from Villaseca.
Thank you, Madam President. There's another thank you. So does the amended budget, this item, does it support the proposed constraints and constraint progress measures that we talked about earlier this evening? Does it support that, or should we expect another amendment to come as we're navigating this pandemic?
Yeah. So as far as the budget dollars, actually, in this amendment, most of it gets us through October. So we wanted to wait to see. We didn't want to just come forward and just ask for a whole year of costs, so we really didn't know we're going to be there yet. So this gets us to starting school face-to-face in October. It does have the, for example, the cost for the fogging of campuses if we've got to close campuses down during this period, and the cleaning supplies. Also instructional supports. So, we're going to do some of this kind of in chunks. So we will be bringing back another amendment either in September or in October to add money back in, because obviously we're going to know at that point if we're going to be face-to-face or we're going to be more of a hybrid or fully virtual. And that will determine another amendment. So probably around October will be another one.
Got it. Thank you. And thank you, Harris County. How many? 3 thank yous right there for sharing, and to TEA for doing a match for the CARES funding.
Okay, I see Trustee Santos, I see you in the queue. However, you have already expended your minute and we're only doing one round. So there would need to be a motion, a second, and a vote for a second round.
I move for a second round so Trustee Santos can make her remarks.
I second it.
So we will need a vote, discussion by my colleagues. Let's vote. Thumbs up, thumbs down. 1, 2. I always said I would never be the fifth vote to vote down. So I see 2 people not vote. If there's, okay, so everybody's in favor of it. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Santos, 1 minute.
Thank you, President Dygard. So Dr. Lathan, I just for a point of clarity, so we have this money, and you said that it would go towards people. So for Wheatley High School, you'd have $195,000. North Forest, $165,000. Chavez High School, close to $315,000. DD Middle School, $40,000. Cullen Middle School, $120,000. Sharpstown High School, over $200,000. Liberty High School, $145,000. And I am going to say this, that Trustee Dygard and myself, and District 1 and District 5, our schools would receive the least amount, with Trustee Bluford Daniels receiving the most. Madison High School, $168,000. Burr High School, $120,000. So these are examples of what our schools would receive. And some of our schools don't have money for nurses. Some of our schools don't have money for, that don't have librarians and so forth. So this is money that would go towards personnel. Again, I know that we said, and again, President Dygard and Dr. Lathan, with all due respect, I know we said this, everybody said it was a great idea and they needed more time. And we have a little more time now, and we have a little bit better understanding of where we're going with our budget. It's $4.6 million. It's, again, small price tag to pay for moving forward with equity. And I would just respectfully ask that until we can really grapple with the idea of equity, this is just a small start. And again, I will go for the will of the board. If nobody wants me to make this amendment, I won't do it. But I hope that y'all would. And I'd welcome your feedback. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. As we shared, as I shared in June, that we would look at this throughout the 2020-21 school year, making a recommendation to change the funding allocation in the middle of a budget cycle, and this is the middle of a budget cycle, would not be in the best interest of the district right now. Like I said, but definitely we talked about looking at it throughout and making those discussions. So as we move forward over the next several months, and also the board adopts their goals and we work on the strategic plan, all of that can be factored in. So I haven't forgotten, but to do that tonight would change everything as it relates to all the allocations and how we've already set up our staffing and everything for the upcoming school year.
Thank you, Dr. And I do understand that it was presented.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further speakers in the queue on this item, please vote thumbs up or thumbs down. Agenda item I6. I can't see everybody. Just you're not, okay, so 1, 2, just hold them up till I count 1, 2, 3. We're just 8 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. The next item to be considered is agenda item J1. May I have it is the second amendment to the March 19th, 2020 resolution regarding to continuation of payments to employees and continuing business operations during the COVID-19 outbreak. May I have a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Sung? Dr. Madam President, you want have any comments you want to make to this before Trustee Sung starts?
Did you throw it to me?
I threw it to you.
Oh, okay. Yes. Last week, I know there was a question from trustees as it relates to the board being able to receive an update monthly as it relates to the utilization of the superintendent's authority as it relates to this particular agenda item. And so I just want to go on the record again of making sure trustees know we made that note and that information will be provided when we hold a board meeting each month. Similar to the instructional continuity update that you receive, it will just be included.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Trustee Sung, since you asked to have this pulled from consent, if you have any questions or comments?
Thank you. No, I just wanted to follow up on that discussion from last week. So thank you, Dr. Lathan, for committing to include that in our monthly update. I'm fine if that's a written report. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that's presented verbally, but whichever would work for you. So thank you. Those are all my remarks for this item. Thank you.
So question, Trustee Sung, I'm hearing you say you're okay if it's a written report that is provided to us monthly and it doesn't have to be discussed at the board meeting? Are you, so?
I think either, yeah, I'd like the information. Could there be a system so this be provided to us regularly?
It'll be in the superintendent's update.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further speakers in the queue on this item, please vote thumbs up, thumbs down. Hold your hand up high because sometimes it's a little low and we can't see. 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. We are now ready to consider the parts of today's agenda.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. There's some mumbling. Can we silence it?
Is everybody on mute? Okay. I think some of that might be the boardroom. We are now ready to consider the balance of today's agenda. And I know that you have something, Trustee Santos, but let me open up the consent agenda first. Do I have a motion to accept the balance of today's agenda by consensus?
So moved, Madam.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Trustee Santos, if you have something you need to pull from consent, it needs a motion and a second and a vote from the board to pull it from consent, then we'll vote on that item, and then we'll come back for discussion on the rest of this, okay?
Thank you. So, and do that now.
Yes, do that now.
I move to pull F2 from the consent agenda item, please.
Second, Sung.
Any discussion? Please vote. We're not voting on the item. We're voting on pulling the item from consent. Trustee Bluford Daniels, I can't see you. Thumbs up or thumbs down, voting to pull it from consent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstentions. Approved to pull from consent. So we're now discussing F2. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Okay. All right, seeing no discussion on the item, please vote on agenda item F2.
Can you remind us what item that is? Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my agenda quickly.
District of Innovation. To form a District of Innovation Committee.
Got it. Thank you.
I got a question.
Okay, Trustee Flynn-Villasego, sorry.
Thank you. So I just have a question. I know it's been a while since we've revisited this topic as a group since the last time we had to vote on it. So I wanted to check in with administration, given everything that's going on right now, if the administration feels that it's okay to balance everything else with this, given the timing, right, with the pandemic and opening school and everything. So I wanted to check in to see what the thoughts were on that.
Yes, and remember, this is the next step in the process that you would vote to form the committee, and then if the board approves this item, you would be asked to submit names for the committee members. Then in September, you would be asked, if it passes tonight, to vote on the committee. So it's still a step-by-step process that will take us throughout the 2020-21 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. The timeline for that process hasn't changed?
No. The timeline has not changed.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lathan.
Trustee Adams.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent, question for you. Based on some of the constituents' concerns, what they brought, knowing with the pandemic and everything that's going on, can you address that with a surety on how we're going to handle that to include safety and how that's going to move forward?
And so what's going on with the pandemic is one issue. The DOI and the committee working, that will be separate. We are still focused on ensuring that our buildings are ready to receive staff and students when they return. And that focus we won't take our eyes off of that focus. The committee is a separate group that would be also working on a possible District of Innovation plan that would then be presented to the board for approval.
And this is going to be virtual meetings, correct?
These will be virtual meetings, yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Sung.
Madam President, I share the speaker's concerns about the timing of this work. We are biting off a lot. Opening school during a pandemic, our governance work, also District of Innovation. But I respect the will of this board. If it is to move forward, I'll participate in the process. What I hope is that we consider what the TEA itself puts out as guidance for this, right? Articulate the problem your plan is addressing. I don't really see how there's a big area of need where a District of Innovation is needed, given that we can do a year-round calendar, given the existing flexibilities around certification. But I hope that we can be clear about the problem and the solution we're offering. And that I hope that we also, the other thing the TA says is involve all of your stakeholders, including those who do not always agree with you. So I hope we can be really, however this committee does its work, that it really engages broadly with the community. I thought we could have done a better job of advising and advertising the hearing that we had previously. And so I hope that we'll do our best to really make sure that there's strong engagement on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sung. Next is Trustee Santos.
Thank you, President Dygard. I just want to say that we lose the dynamics of actually being a board because we blur the public sphere and the domestic sphere, and it's so easy to hide behind screens, the anonymity behind it all. And we're not reaching the people that we need to reach. We see that it's inequitable now with people that don't have technology at home, students that don't have technology. So we haven't reached the public. This has not been transparent. We have not been able to actually engage people, and that's kind of hypocritical because we have a committee for community engagement, yet we're completely discounting teacher voices, student voices, parent voices that haven't been reached. And I just cannot vote on this. I will, like Trustee Sung said, will be a team player, but we need to do a better job. Thank you.
Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Thank you. I'm just curious at this point, because obviously I still support the DOI, but I'm just curious at this point, if we, with everything going on, if we push back a month, how would that, until the September meeting, how would that affect the timelines moving forward as far as forming the next step?
It would not have any impact.
Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion in the queue, we are voting on agenda item F1.
F2. Item F2.
Item F2. Sorry, I'm looking. Did I just see two more speakers pop up?
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Madam Superintendent, would you be okay if this item is postponed until the September meeting? Since Trustee Bluford Daniels brought the question forward.
It has, like I said, it has no bearing on the work that we need to do as a district right now to open up schools. So if it's delayed, it just delays on getting the committee members selected and then appointed by the board. So if that's the will of the board, we will make it work. But there's nothing else extra that we need to do other than put it back on the agenda again. But you can't submit any Q&As around it if you move it. Thank you.
Go ahead. Are you done, Trustee Adams?
Yeah, I'm done. I basically, because there's still questions that need, I still want to make sure we hear, because Trustee Santos brought up a good question, not necessarily the teachers and everyone that's sending in emails, but I think the voice that's probably is missing, because I had like a couple of parents that called today and they are not supportive of this item, but these are people who are politically astute, who's engaged. But how about that everyday parent to understand exactly what we're doing? And I know that's something that we have not done. And I would like to ask Madam Chair Cruz, since the question was brought up about a community engagement, I don't know if this could be part of our role, Madam Chair, if we could postpone this item.
Adams, first, you're out of time. I'll answer.
I would like to make a motion to postpone this until September to the next board meeting.
Okay, and
I second. Bluford Daniels second.
Okay, any discussion on postponing? I'm just going to address Trustee Adams' comment and the couple of comments that colleagues have made about the Community Engagement Committee. The Community Engagement Committee was appointed, and they have a very explicit charge. They are not an ongoing committee. Their explicit charge is to create a community engagement plan around us having community conversations on our goals, constraints, and theory of action as part of our governance process. The original deadline for them to bring the board a plan was in the spring before COVID hit. Well, it would have been around April. COVID hit, so that work has been delayed. I have asked Trustee Cruz, who chairs that committee, to prepare before the end of the month in order to be put on with the committee that she works with, to be put on the September agenda for the board to understand what that proposed plan is going to be. So that committee's charge is only for the scope of our governance work. Okay, so seeing no further speakers, the motion on the table is to postpone agenda item, what were we on, F2? I need to get back to the screen where I can see you all. To postpone, and I would be clear, the motion is to postpone, not to table, correct, Trustee Adams? Okay, the
motion is only postponed to the next, whatever that next meeting is in September. I think I have to say the date, whatever that date is in September.
Next regular board meeting in September?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the motion.
I second it.
I want to make sure the language is clear for board services, because there was another meeting in our minutes that had a glitch. The motion on the table is to postpone agenda item F2 to our next regular board meeting in September. I hear a second. Please vote. Seven in favor, 2 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. We are now back to the balance of our consent agenda. Seeing no further discussion in the speaker queue for that, please vote on the balance of the consent agenda.
Do you need to make a motion? I make a motion on the balance?
We already made a motion.
Okay.
Please vote. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. The balance of the consent agenda passes. I am going to respectfully ask my colleagues, because it is exactly 7 o'clock, which means it is at exactly 2 hours of our business meeting. We still have to go back into closed session for some items. So normally this would be when we would have reports from trustees and reports from the superintendent. Unless someone chimes into the queue with any objection to not doing B1 comments this evening, I will pause a second in case anybody needs to type. Going once, going twice. We are now going to...
Trustee, President Dygard, do you want to do the hearing of community first before you go back to close, or you want to do it after close?
Darn, no. I guess I thought we had already done that. I thought we were doing so great tonight, and we were going to get all of that in under 2 hours.
We're still doing well. We're doing well. We're doing well. Are you ready?
Well, okay. Oh, wait. And we also have consideration of the minutes from previous meetings. All right. Darn. We were doing so well. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the agenda review meeting held on August 6th, 2020? I would highly recommend that we be honest with ourselves if we did not read these before we vote to approve them, because there is a meeting minute from a previous meeting we are going to have to bring back in September. Really quick, look at those if you haven't already, or abstain from the vote. So a motion to approve the minutes from agenda review on August 6th. Any motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, please vote. Or I guess we're just voting, sorry. Please vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. We have now come to the portion of our meeting where we normally hear from our community. We are glad you have joined us online today under current guidance from federal, state, and community authorities concerning large gatherings and social distancing during the COVID-19 public health emergency. The Hattie Mae White Educational Support Center, including the board auditorium, is closed. However, it is still important that we allow time to hear from our community. In order to have your voices heard by the HISD Board of Education, you must have registered to speak with the Board Services Office by 9:30 a.m. today. Speakers should have left a telephone number when registering. District staff, this is the same stuff I read earlier. We have 5 members of the community that have submitted comments to be read aloud during this portion of the meeting. Comments should be limited to 300 words or 2 minutes each. Please refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as they are protected under the Family Rights, Education Rights and Privacy Act. Abusive statements or threats of confrontation are not permitted. Any comments in violation of these guidelines will not be read. Turning it over to administration to manage the speakers and the callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Dr. Feya Obama Hinte. You have 2 minutes. Please go ahead with your comments.
Thank you so much. Good evening, HISD Board of Trustee, Superintendent Dr. Lanzam. Thank you for your time today. My name is Dr. Feya Obama Hinte, and I am co-founder of Oasis Focus, Inc., a nonprofit organization in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that supports our public schools, both students and educators. My reason for coming before you this evening is to share about the new approved TA CPE courses for our educators, basically focused on cultural appreciation. And in that track, we have 4 courses, which for a total of 16 hours. Our educators basically can gain a deeper understanding about race and ethnicity as they start the. And I'm hoping that through these online courses, because of COVID-19, we've placed them online. They will be available beginning next week for our educators to see the diversity that we have in our schools as something that can unify us together. They are in the front lines of educating our students, and we believe strongly that our educators having those lens of the beauty of diversity will be a great asset as we move into a new school year. So thank you for what you do. It's a thankless job of serving your community, and we want you to know that we are behind you 100%. So thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sister Mama Sonia. Sister Mama Sonia, you may begin.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You have your 2 minutes.
All right, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Start now. I must be behind. Somebody's talking?
No, if you could mute that, we're ready to hear from you, Sister Mama Sonia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Good evening, trustees. 2020 has been a hell of a year filled with misery and not much cheer. The killing of George Floyd pulled the blanket off the ever-present racism in America, igniting rallies, marches, and demonstrations from the youngest to the young to the oldest of the old. The embers of protest remained hot, never going cold. When the students came back to school and want to have that Black Lives Matter discussion, are the teachers ready to engage in meaningful conversation? When the students press to talk about this difficult topic, are the teachers ready to listen and not turn this into a discipline issue? If not, do you have plans to in-service them on how to have that difficult talk on race by providing a safe and protected space? Now, COVID-19 adds a quite disturbing twist to the 2020 conundrum, a wretched disease that was wrecked us to the core and then some. As the campuses go live on October 19th, it's doubtful that this wretched disease would have lost its sting. There are so many concerns about opening too soon, like exposing everybody into the building to the disease, wreaking havoc and causing them to close right back down. How will you keep masks on elementary kids, seniors for that matter, all day long, without criminalizing no mask, even if it's wrong? I suggest that little kids only be allowed to wear the blue regulation ones to avoid switching them. You know, you got a Spider-Man, I got a Wonder Woman. But that should only be a concern after January 2021, when you should assess the wisdom of being open. Therefore, I ask, implore, beseech, appeal to you. Please don't open our schools too soon and risk an even greater prospect of doom. Thank you, trustees.
Thank you, Sister Mama Sonia. Our next speaker is Tiffany Elwell. Ms. Elwell, you may begin.
I am an HISD employee, an HISD parent, and an HISD constituent. HISD board meetings are being conducted online to comply with state and local requirements and to protect the health of the community. I am asking that all HISD employees whose essential job functions can be performed remotely be given that option when returning to duty on August 24th. There are many non-teachers who are afraid to ask to be given the option of working remotely because of fear of retaliation. Similarly, there are teachers who want to teach from campus who may not be given that option. Most campus-based employees have been working remotely since March 13th and have returned to campus intermittently as needed. We were competent and effective in performing our job duties remotely, and we should be given that option now. As I'm sure you already know,
more than 230 HISD employees have reported testing positive for COVID. More than 80 campuses closed in the month of June due to COVID exposure, and Harris County's current positivity rate is 15%. According to Harris County Public Health Department, the current level of risk for Harris County is level 1 or code red, which signifies a severe and uncontrolled level of COVID in Harris County. At the code red level, Harris County Judge and County's Public Health Department advised that we should be taking action to minimize contacts with others whenever possible and avoid leaving home except for the most essential needs like going to the grocery store. Additionally, because of the code red risk level, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many HISD employees who are also parents will have difficulty arranging childcare and believe that their children are best protected from COVID by remaining at home. HISD cannot and should not ignore this information and mandate that some employees go back into the buildings without being given a telework option. I am asking that the district extend substantial consideration and flexibility of the working environment for the benefit of all employees. HISD employees are professionals who did not stop working when the buildings closed. We did not choose for schools to be closed in March, and most of us have no say on when buildings reopen. We should have the option to feel safe from the risk of COVID in our working environment and be able to work remotely.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Mark Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you may begin.
Hello. Yes, I am Mark Johnson. I'm an HISD teacher, and I just wanted to share a compliment. We're enormously relieved with the board's decision to push back face-to-face teaching into October. And I just wanted to say that as a pretty highly effective teacher with over 10 years of experience, that the board has definitely earned my loyalty and appreciation as an employee. I know a lot of teachers are frightened, scared. I know one teacher in an adjacent district, an old friend who is an even better teacher than I am, and that teacher is thinking about resigning from their school district. And I'm trying to recruit her over to HISD, so maybe not this year, but the next. So I just wanted to share that I think it was an incredibly wise and an effective decision for keeping great employees, great teachers, and for, I hope, in the future, getting more great teachers. That's it. Thank you.
Next, Ms. Jones will read. Ms. Jones will read the statement for student Jennifer Hamad.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Hamad, and I am the current speaker of the HISD Student Congress, which now has nearly 90 members. In July, we conducted a survey which received over 3,200 responses to assess the opinions of parents, students, and teachers regarding the reopening of schools in the fall. After conducting statistical analysis on the data we collected, we found that families who do not have access to child care, technology, or sufficient meals at home are all more likely to send their children to school in person in the fall. Thus, the idea of providing a choice to these families to return to school is superficial at best and exploits the circumstances of disadvantaged families. As a Congress, we developed 3 solutions we plan to execute to help our disadvantaged students and families who desire to remain virtual this fall. We are aware that HISD is hiring college students to provide tutoring services in HISD. In addition to this, we would like to launch a free tutoring childcare service, which would allow high school students to provide in-person tutoring and childcare for the children of parents who cannot afford childcare and have children too young to remain at home and do virtual school while they attend to other responsibilities. There will also be a virtual tutoring option for families who do have older children who can supervise their younger siblings. Furthermore, although there are many opportunities for families to obtain food through HISD's food distribution and PEBT benefits, many families expressed that these resources were either not enough to support their families or that they could not make use of these resources because of a variety of other impediments. We received very positive feedback on our survey as families expressed that they love the idea of utilizing our bus drivers to bus around food to neighborhoods in need to better combat hunger in HISD. Lastly, we know that worries weigh heavy on your minds and the minds of families in need of technological resources, as it is uncertain still whether the devices HISD purchase will be available to students before the start of the school year. Thus, we would like to organize donation drives for gently used laptops to ensure the educations of our disadvantaged students are not put on hold or hindered because of a lack of resources. We hope that these ideas are ones you are willing and interested in pursuing and would desire to work closely with you all to better bring these ideas to life.
Thank you. That concludes our hearing of the community. Trustee Dygard, you're on mute, I believe.
Thank you. The board will now adjourn to closed session in the board services conference room under Section D of Chapter 551 of Texas Government Code.
Dygard,
Yes?
did you check the queue?
Yes. I see. Wanting to take a quick break?
No, Trustee Sung and myself would like to have a quick minute of our B1 comments.
Oh, I thought you wanted to do after closed session. Sorry. Yes. Okay. So I guess we're doing B1 comments. We usually start left to right. So starting trustee, actually we're going to go 1 through 9 because I can't remember where we sat anymore at the dais. Trustee, so we'll go around 1 minute per trustee. Feel free to waive your time. Trustee Santos.
Thank you, President Dygard. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Lathan and Trustee Hernandez for the vigil tomorrow that's being held for Vanessa Guillen. When I look at Vanessa, I see the 1,100 students, the over 1,100 students that I taught for the 10 years that I was a teacher in HISD in the community where I grew up. I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and all I've ever wanted to do is give back to my community. And I can't express how devastating the loss of Vanessa Guillen is for our community, and that I wish that Governor Abbott and Mike Morath would reconsider the CCMRs, because recruiters prey on poor communities like mine to enlist kids that are often neglected and torn to pieces by the military. But just want to say that that I am Vanessa Guillen, and that my community, my students, we are Vanessa Guillen. And thank you, Dr. Lathan, for the vigil tomorrow. That's all.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. Next is District 2, Trustee Luford Daniels.
I feel your pain, Trustee Santos. And all of our children, our Black and brown children primarily, our low-income children for the most part, are the ones that usually sign up for the military. So let's just all be prayerful for that family, prayerful for each and every one of us. And thank you, thank you, President.
Trustee Hernandez. Trustee Hernandez.
Thank you, Trustee Dygard. I'm just going to pass.
Trustee Allen.
I am Vanessa Guillen. Thank you.
Trustee Flynn-Villaseca.
I am also Vanessa Guillen.
Trustee Sung.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Trustee Santos. In addition to Vanessa Guillen and her family, let's also keep a place in our hearts for the millions of children, teachers, support staff, paraprofessionals, administrators that are stepping back onto school campuses this week, this month, next month. I deeply wish that they all be safe and free from this terrible pandemic. I'm grateful for the wisdom of Dr. Lathan in recommending, and this board in confirming tonight, that we delay our calendar to a September 8th start. I'm grateful for the wisdom of the Harris County Public Health Department in recommending metrics that would allow us to start school safely. And I ask that we all do our very best everywhere to mask up, stay safe, social distance, do whatever it takes to help stop the spread of this disease. Let's not be carriers for this terrible disease. And if it would help, I am willing to sit at home at a board meeting and wear a mask, normalize us being masked on camera, so that those of you in the boardroom can also be wearing masks to prevent the spread of this disease through the air. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Trustee Cruz.
Ditto on my colleagues. Thank you.
Trustee Adams.
Thank you so much. I just want to ditto for the Guillen family and, of course, Trader Truth on yesterday for the $30,000 donation that he provided. And to all of our employees who are fearful and who do not want to return, because you have some that are deciding not to even return back to teaching to a profession that they love so dearly because of this disease. And I want to thank you, Dr. Lathan, for your heart of service and your compassion and it's not easy for you. I know it's not. And so that you know that you have the support of this board, of everything that's weighing on your shoulder. And people still have to remember, you are a wife, you have a husband, and you have children as well. And so you still put yourself on the front line, of course, to Lisa, and of course to everyone and to David for all the work and support that you continue to give us, because this is a hard job, especially in the midst of COVID. And I just want to thank my colleagues for just remaining safe and for all of us to remain safe. I know it's not easy because we're dealing with emotional stuff too. And our first responders, our HISD staff who's coming down with this disease. So we all just have to be mindful and just careful. And as always, many of us have various faiths and what we believe and who we believe in. Mine is Jesus Christ. And so just want to make sure that we stay prayerful and thoughtful during this time, because people are losing their lives. And so we just have to continue to keep them in the forefront. Will continue to be my prayer each and every day. And let's pray and check on one another. Outside of HISD business, let's just pick up the phone and just see how we're doing. I want to thank Kathy for picking up the phone and say, hey, sis, I'm just checking on you. Let's do that because we don't know what everybody is going to. Single mother Santos, I can't even imagine with a new baby. And I definitely can't even imagine the decisions that you're going to have to make with your baby having to start school. And, of course, Holly and many of you that are parents and have to return children to school. So God bless each and every one of you, because this is a trying time for all of us.
Thank you all. I'd be putting on my mask, but I don't have one in this room, and I didn't want to leave y'all. So really quickly, Dr. Lathan, would you please share when the memorial for Vanessa Guillen is?
Yes, the memorial is tomorrow from 12 to 5:30 at Chavez High School, and then there's a rosary ceremony at 6 o'clock. Everyone will be required to wear a mask and exercise physical distancing. And I want to thank all the members of Team HISD, especially our facilities department, police services, and also Principal Landa at Chavez High School and his team for working with the Guillen family to ensure that we can properly, as a community, recognize our fallen soldier and our alumni from Chavez High School.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. I want to echo what my colleagues said, and I see my husband just brought me one. I think even though we're all at home, I fully support this idea of us wearing masks so we can, even when we're on videos, normalize the behavior. I'm thinking especially with our children, how do we normalize it for them? That this is what they get used to seeing. I don't watch cartoons. My kids are big. I would love to see some cartoon about wearing masks. I'd love to see the children's programming, that everything that they're seeing on a screen, they're seeing the behaviors that need to be modeled so that this is normalized for them. It's heart-wrenching to me that this is what they're all growing up in, but I have absolutely every confidence in the educators and all of our other staff in this district as we because school's going to start before our next regular board meeting, by the way. Even though it's online, school is going to start. And I just have a great deal of respect for our educators rising to this absolutely incredible challenge to still continue to teach and care for our children under such different and challenging circumstances. As I said, as when we concluded our last in-person board meeting on March 12th, God bless us all. This is an incredibly different and new world that we're living in right now, and we're gonna really see it as we're over the next few weeks as we get back to school. So let us adjourn now to closed session. Oh, Dr. Lathan, do you have any comments at this time?
Just a reminder of the massive food giveaway tomorrow from 2 to 7 at NRG.
Thank you. The board will now adjourn to closed session in the board services conference room under section D as in David, of chapter 551 of Texas Government Code Open Meetings Act, subsections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.082, 551.0821, and 551.083. Should board final action vote or decision on any matter considered in the closed session be required, such final action vote or decision shall be taken at the open meeting covered by this notice upon the reconvening of this public meeting or at a subsequent meeting of the board upon notice thereof. The board has adjourned to closed session at 7:24 p.m. Trustees, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then board services should have sent us a link to a Zoom for the next closed session, but let's come back. If it is 7:25 now, let's come back at 7:30. Meeting of the Board of Education of the Houston Independent School District is now reconvened in open session. The time is 8:24 p.m. Are there any motions from closed session?
Yes. I move that the board ratify the district's Purdue Pharma bankruptcy claim filing on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Second.
Please vote. Nine in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstention. Motion passes.
C2J, I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Harris County, Texas versus Houston Independent School District in the county court at law number 3, Harris County, Texas, case number 1152181 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Trustee Adams? Keep your thumbs up because I go through the line and I count. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Next motion.
C2K, I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of John Albert Hightower versus Houston Independent School District in the 234th Judicial District Court, Harris County, Texas, cause number 2018-41096 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Motion passes.
C21. I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Rosa Davila et Alves versus Houston Independent School District in the 334th Judicial District Court, Harris County, Texas, cause number 2017-21104 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vote. Nine in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Motion passes.
C2M. I move that the board authorize the district to settle the matter of Angelica D., Ruth D. versus Houston Independent School District, TEA docket number 281 SE0620 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Trustee Bluford Dangus? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Next item.
C2N. I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of Robert Lopez against Ruby McNeil and AAA insurance for workers' compensation benefits, AAA insurance claim number 0136190069 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. So tell you what, board services keeps posting the total up there. Make sure you stay up so they can see your votes. Okay, 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 against, or 0 against, 0 abstentions. Next motion.
C-20, I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of Jackie Thornton against Jennifer Danielle Roberts and Progressive Insurance on workers' compensation benefits, Progressive Insurance claim number 204393238 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Trustee Adams? 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. Next motion.
C2P, I move that the board.
There's a typo. Authorize.
I move that the board authorize the district to settle the subrogation lien of L. Phyllis Graham against Victor Maldonado and Hanover Insurance for workers' compensation benefits, Hanover Insurance claim number 19006240057 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, or everyone please vote. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. Next motion.
C2R, I move that the board approve the settlement agreement in the matter of Andrea C. BNF Yolanda G. versus Houston Independent School District TEA docket 274 SE0520 on the terms discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. Next motion.
C3PO and R2D2 are awesome. No, okay, just kidding.
You have to take another picture too, Santos.
Personnel, I move that the board approve a finding of no good cause for educators to resign or abandon employment contracts without district consent under sections 21.015C, 21.160C, or 21.10C of the Texas Education Code as discussed in closed session, and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to submit a written complaint to SBEC to impose sanctions effective August 14th, 2020.
There's second?
Second. Second.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Item passes. Next motion.
I move that the board approve the balance of the closed session personnel agenda, including specifically the board approve proposed terminations of continuing term and probationary contracts, approve end of term terminations of probationary contracts, that the board approve proposed non-renewals of term contracts, that the board approve issuance of 4th year probationary contracts, and that the board authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to provide notice of same, that the board approve separation and release agreements, that the board approve withdrawals of contract recommendations and in any reissuance of same, and that the board approve issuance of final orders on contract terminations and non-renewals as discussed in closed session effective August 14th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. Item passes. Next motion.
That's all.
That's it. Awesome.
You got to check another picture, Santos. I got my HISD mask.
Okay, I'm coming. Y'all got it? Say cheese. No, say, I don't know. What doesn't really matter. All right, y'all are awesome.
Trustee Santos, would you send that to all of us?
Absolutely. I'll send it through legal so they can post it.
I think you can send us a picture. We look forward to seeing everyone at our next regular board meeting on September 10th, 2020. There being no further business, this meeting is officially adjourned at 8:32 p.m. Voting on the revised progress measures for our emergency constraints, 5 p.m. Same venue. Stay healthy. See you all next week.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lathan. Bye.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lathan.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lathan.